All right, teammates, we are back once again. This is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Always great to have you. Always great to have newcomers. To my regular listeners, you already know how I get down. You know what I'm about, Mr. ABC. Always be connecting. Once again, shout out to podmatch.com. I've only been on it for a week, but make sure you use my affiliate link. But it's called podmatch.com/move swiftly. It has absolutely solved a ton of problems for me. Listen, Phil, it's only been maybe, like I said, not even a week yet. And I'm already like in the top 8 of podcast hosts in terms of that leaderboard that we have. So it's been an incredible platform. It's been taking a whole lot of the work I used to have to do out of the work I'm doing now. So again, I have an incredible guest. His name is Philip Blackett. And I listened to you early, Phil, and there was so many things that I want to get into with you. I want to talk about AI. I want to talk about being disagreeable, respectfully disagreeable. So many things I want to get into you. So before we even get into our conversation today, why don't you just kind of grab the microphone for a second, introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll go from there.
Let me grab the microphone right here. Thanks so
Grab
much
the
for
mic,
having
my man. Grab the mic. Go ahead. Do your thing.
everyone. Thanks so much. And I'm just happy to be on the show here. I think a quick tidbit about me is I'm originally born and raised from Memphis, Tennessee, so Southerner at heart. So I'm a lover of all things barbecue, Chick-fil-A, sweet tea related. Went to school in North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Went up to New York City, worked on Wall Street for a little bit, corporate America for a little bit, did some entrepreneur things. Went back to school at Harvard for business. Went to seminary, learned how God wanted us to go about the world around us. And now I'm about to be 40 in a few months. Got a wife and two kids. Been married for 8 years, a father for seven. And at this point, I'd really just focus on how can I have a great positive impact on the people around me. Wrote few books, six to be exact this year, and we'll talk about at least one of them today. And just excited to see how we can help bridge things forward, help us build better teams around us.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that because the first book that kind of stuck out to me was this concept of knowing how to disagree with people but being respectful. And there's been a lot of that going on in the media, as you can see, whether it is the mainstream media, a lot of the things that get a lot of clicks nowadays because of the platform and because everybody kind of has their own lane or their own voice to speak whatever it is, the things that make big news are the disagreements, and that's what kind of catches people off guard. So I think the best way to start off this conversation is number one, walk us through how you walked into that concept and what made you so passionate about it that you wrote an entire book about the subject.
Yeah, so I think part of it, as one is the fact, disagreements are not new to us, right? We've had disagreements from the beginning of time. What's new is kind of like what you mentioned before. We have a society that is favoring, rewarding, and is incentivized to keep us divided. And if it's the case where we can spin certain things that are happening in the news, where one side is demonizing or antagonizing the other, and we're doing that as a way to get people to click on our articles,
Mm-hmm.
watch our shows,
Mm-hmm.
get sponsors to give us money to keep our platforms on and going. Uh, what inspired me to write this book was, a 4th of July encounter I had with my family last year. So essentially, my sister's family came up here, I had my family, and we both had our mother up here. And the adults were in the living room. And essentially, my sister and I were having a conversation about something that, quite frankly, I don't remember what that topic was. However, I do understand and know and remember that we were on opposite sides of the spectrum. And so essentially what happened was while we were having this discussion, some could call it debate, tomato, tomato, you know, my mother jumps in, basically trying to officiate it, but she's just missing her zebra shirt and her whistle, right? And says, hey, we're not going to have this discussion right now. We're having fireworks later on for 4th of July tonight. I do not want to see fireworks happening right here in this house right now. And so while I understand the intent behind that Aswan as far as why she did that, to help preserve the peace and have us have a fond memory when we thought about 4th of July when we look back on life. The impact was it was a lost opportunity. It was a lost opportunity for me to get to know my sister better, for her to get to know me better. Because I would imagine you probably would agree with this. Some conversations, despite having social media, despite having Zoom and text messaging and our smartphones and that sort of thing, some conversations are better had in person. They're better had face to face with somebody we care about. And that was one that we didn't have that conversation because of fear of disagreement and what that disagreement could lead to. And what it had me thinking in retrospect was, I mean, man, if that was the case with me, I wonder how many other people around the world are probably having a similar experience where they can't get to know people, be themselves authentically because out of fear of not seeing eye to eye. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what really said to me, let's see if we can do something about it. That's what stemmed this 5-step framework. And then the book ultimately, Disagree Without Disrespect, how to respectfully debate with those who think, believe, and vote differently from you.
But you know that, and like you said, I do agree with your points. But what I found is that it always slams an individual like me, or even I'm sure you've gone through the same thing, in a dilemma. Because the minute you start pushing people out of what they perceive as the comfort zone, like in all due, that was where your mother was during that July 4th argument. I want things to be comfortable. I want things to be civil. I don't want anything to jump off. That same avoidance of the comfort zone also exists in the workplace. It exists in organizationally, it exists in relationship, it exists in so many aspects of what we do. How do you respond to that challenge? How were you able to come up with the framework that was going to be sort of tangential, I should say, to this comfort zone that all of us are naturally pushed into?
Yeah. So I think part of it is one, this book isn't simply just a book about politics or voting, right?
Hmm.
What you just illustrated is we're dealing with relationships in all facets with all different types of people, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, whether it's, debates in the boardroom, the classroom, the living room,
Hmm.
or what have you. And so I think it really is a sense that, we have to come to a point with, hey, are we currently served well by the status quo on how we go about disagreements now?
Hmm.
And if not, would we be open to a potentially better alternative to learn and adopt in our own conversations and hopefully the model for other people? Because I think at some point, a lot of people get tired of sticking with just small talk, not really getting beneath the surface and understanding somebody, right? Really understanding and learning about somebody. I think the other part of it too is the next generation should understand that you can be a mature adult and have a conversation with somebody that you disagree with on that topic and still respect and love that person in a healthy relationship. Because I think a lot of us are believing the lie that to love someone is contingent on whether you agree with that person.
Hmm.
And if that was the case, then my wife and I would have never survived 8 years up to this point. We would have broken up at the honeymoon stage if it was based on whether or not we agree on everything. And
Yeah.
that's like marriage, the most intimate of relationships. So imagine if that's the case where we can have disagreements and still be together,
Hmm.
then I would imagine there's some things that we can learn from that we can apply to our other relationships, our other friendships, and our coworker, engagements as well.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because you are a living proof example of why marriages need that disagreement in order to grow. And it brings me to another topic to where nowadays, because I know I've been on your profile, looked through what you're about. You're a man of God. You're a believer of Christ and all that. And nowadays, that being married thing is not popular. That just, actually building a family, going to church, actually wearing your faith boldly on your sleeve and speaking it to the point where again, I just looked you up online and I know you're a believer. I know how much you love Jesus Christ and things of that nature. how do you think we can at least address that issue? Because as we're talking, I'm not even realizing as I'm having this conversation with you is like, look, this is affecting our marriages. This is affecting the way we build our families. This is affecting the way we build our communities because nobody wants to disagree. Everybody wants to be okay. Nobody wants to call anybody out because they're afraid of losing their jobs and essentially losing that comfort zone that was created. So what are the steps? What are the steps that one must take in order to get there? Because what I've learned, Philip, is when you get a person that has so it becomes so habitual and has fallen down that track, it is so hard to pull them out of that mindset. They will do everything in their power to stay in that comfort zone, no matter how detrimental you make it, no matter how logical you make it, no matter what gets said. They've gotten so stuck in that mindset that it almost half the challenge is just getting them thinking a different way.
Yeah, so I think to your point, Aswand, I think when you've been burned enough times,
Hmm.
you'll not only steer clear of the stove, you'll just steer clear out of the kitchen altogether.
Mm.
Right. And so the thought is, listen, I think everyone's been burned before. Everyone's had that conversation that went too long, had a conversation with somebody that got violent or aggressive, and you say, hey, listen, I don't want to engage with that person or that matter or topic at all. And you may feel like you're in a safe space to say, hey, I'm just not going to engage with certain people on certain topics at all. We'll keep it strictly small talk and nothing more in the workplace around the water cooler. If it ain't about work, I ain't got nothing to talk to you about, because I'm not going to get on that level.
I'll put my hand up because there's a couple of colleagues around here. I got that, so hopefully I'll listen to that. But yes, preach on, my brother.
Yeah, which I get it, like because we're going on the sense of trying to self-preserve ourselves. We're
Yes.
trying to get in the sense like we're trying to protect our livelihood, right? Our jobs, our careers. I get it because at that point, of course, you're going to be in an environment where you're working alongside people that you may not normally hang out with. You're going to be with people that you don't normally agree with on certain things. You might be vastly on opposite ends, but what brings you together is you have a job to do.
Hmm.
Everyone in that sort. So it could be easy to say, listen, just keep it focused on work, work only. Hey, see you later. Have a good weekend. See you Monday. That's it. And you move on with your life.
Hmm.
So yeah, this takes work. This takes a sense that, you might be more inclined to keep it familiar, to keep it on the surface level and that sort. Um, but yeah, I'll step into the 5-step framework now to kind of share
Yes, sir.
something for you to at least consider, because I'm not necessarily advocating that you take this framework and apply it to everyone on your squad, on your team tomorrow.
Hmm.
But maybe it might be something like for one person you can think of to say, hey, could I try this framework out with somebody and see how that goes? Maybe somebody that's closer to me, maybe somebody that I have a better dialogue or relationship with in that sort, and then see how that goes. Like, actually, don't be afraid to sit in that tension a little bit to learn about it. So, without further ado, the 5-step framework, the first step is separate the idea or belief from the identity of the believer.
Hmm.
And why that's important, as one, is that oftentimes when you come across certain people talk about certain ideas or topics, they are so intertwined with what that is. They're so mixed into that it essentially becomes who they are. Not placing judgment on that, but it's also understanding the circumstances that, okay, if you go into that scenario and you disagree with the idea, that person may take it as if you're disagreeing with who he or she is.
The identity, yeah.
And so now it's a sense that I may critique that idea. I may be at work saying, hey, that idea is trash, or I got a better idea for this.
Like saying,
And they might be like, hold up, why are you calling me trash? No, I didn't call you trash, right? I didn't disagree with you as a person, but you might be so connected to it that it becomes who you are, where you do take it personal, where you do get defensive about it at work, where you do, raise your wall up, close yourself off from people, and now you're ready to fight because now your ego's, at risk here. Now you're trying to save face, especially if it's done publicly, like
hmm.
around your team,
Hmm.
right, together, not just you one on one. And so now I was like, hold up, I wasn't expecting this. Oh no, 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 we about to go to blows on this one. You about to catch hands on this one,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
But if you can try to separate the idea from the identity, now we can move closer to actually talking about the issue at hand. So that moves on to step two. You can disagree with the idea or belief and still respect and love the believer. As you mentioned before, I'm a man of God, man of faith. This is a play off what I've learned in church growing up, where we're called to hate the sin
But not
and love the sinner.
the center. Yeah.
So it is possible. Two things can be true. I can disagree with your viewpoint, Aswan, and I can respect you as my friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I can respect you as my colleague at work. They don't have to be one and the same, where a lot of people are believing the lie that love is contingent on agreement. If you don't affirm me and agree with everything I have to say, you don't love and respect me. But that's a lie, because two things can be true there. So if you can be able to share that, where it's like, hey, I may disagree, I may have a different viewpoint here, but that doesn't mean that I look at you any differently from how we were before, then that helps people feel more at ease and safer to say, okay, well, let's have the conversation about the issue then. Let's keep it just the issue, which moves on to step three, which basically is debate the idea at hand based on its merit. What do I mean by merit? What we're including here, definitely something that's respectable in the workplace, talking about the facts, talking about the logic, the analysis, what research was included, what was the performance, what were the reviews, what were the results of what happened. You're trying to make this as objective as possible, trying to keep this more of an apples to apples comparison between idea A and idea B. What
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to get involved with, especially not publicly in front of our team and our bosses, we're not going to get involved with name calling. We're not going to be trying to slander or condemn the other person and get into a place where it truly becomes personal for both people. And it looks bad on all of us,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's held publicly. So if you keep the issue at hand, then afterwards move on to step four. You talked about the debate. I heard you out. You heard me. You shared your viewpoint. I shared mine. We put it all on the table. We make a decision. At the end of the debate, regardless of which idea won amongst the team, whether it's you coming to my side of the argument or me going to yours, or maybe we say separate, or maybe some third alternative comes out of nowhere that we weren't expecting altogether, but was a result of us actually having the conversation together.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the outcome, let's exhibit what we had learned when we were young playing sports. We played a game, win or lose, regardless of the sport. What did we do as a team at the end of the game?
Shook it up. We shook
We
it up.
shook.
We looked each other in the eye. And again, the scoreboard told all refs this, coach called this, all that stuff. When you look at it, all of that stuff evens out as it is. And that's why I brought up again, I'm a huge sportsman. I learned business through sports. And that's why I brought up how much disagreements have taken over our journalism, how much that's taken over the way we communicate. And that's why I think you're onto something with this framework. But before I get started, please get to number one. Get to number one. You said five part, correct?
So yeah, step number five,
Yeah, so, I
finally
mean
after
number
step
five. Yeah,
four, because
excuse me.
what step four was
Step five.
about was it was talking about, yep. So step four was talking about good sportsmanship, essentially. Like we can still be good sports even when we grow up, because no one likes a sore loser. No one likes a sore winner either. So once you figure out, now that we open up the debate, we set the groundwork, we set the setting for us to have the debate, we open it up, we had the debate. Now we're closing the debate. Now we're going to come up with a decision. We're going to move forward. Step five is respect and love the person you just had the debate with. Even if you disagree, chalk it up to having diversity of thought in your team. But more importantly, keep the door open for continued conversation. Because honestly, you want to be able to build the relationship, as the relationship between you two should be more important than who's right or wrong. A good example of that would be Hey, Aswand, I appreciate you bringing the idea in today's meeting today with the team. Even though we decided differently on it ultimately after discussion, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I didn't know why that was so important for our customer audience. I didn't know the backstory behind it, but I would have never have known unless you actually said something. So I appreciate that. Actually, I'd love for us to talk a little bit more about that over lunch today. Or maybe we have a speaker talking about the same topic next week. Why don't we go together as far as part of the professional development program, and we can continue the conversation there? But essentially, you're keeping the door open to continue talking, because what often happens is like I said, nobody likes sore losers, nobody likes sore winners. So even if you got your way, didn't get your way, it shouldn't be something that's like, oh, you know what? Bump Aswan. I don't want to talk to him ever again. I'm going to give him the silent treatment when we're meeting together. Don't ask me for nothing. You email me only. You don't call me. You don't, do nothing in that sort. Um, we be adults about it. Some things go well, some things don't, but you can still work together and ultimately learn together. And hopefully the conflict can actually bridge into connection for us.
And that, there's a lot of points that I have to make with that because that missing that concept for you business owners, this is for you listeners now. Missing that concept leads to your staff being replaced over and over. It leads to ultimately your business shutting down. There's so much talent out there, so much information. People have come from so many different backgrounds, psychological backgrounds, psychographics, the whole thing. This is a shrinking world. And if you are so stuck in your own way that you can't listen to another idea, take something from it, and appreciate the people that have the ability and the guts to actually share their idea. You give them this. I've been given the silent treatment by quite a few people, if you could imagine, Phil. But if you don't have the ability to do that, then ultimately your business will fail. However, with when it comes to you, and I was listening to you earlier on, I think it was This is Marketing with Kataya, I think her name, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Katya?
And
Yeah.
yeah, you got into a whole, like, it was close to an hour conversation about AI. However, you get it. It seems like, all right, you have this ability to speak to the communication skills and allow people, give people ways of communicating better in the human experience. However, you've also figured out a way to utilize AI in a very, really thought out way. And me, that's what made me so excited to actually interview you because I'm like, man, this guy, I'm kind of confused because we as creators, whether it's authors, podcast hosts, public speakers, we like to have our hands in stuff. And even I saw a couple of the blogs that you wrote as well. We as writers, sometimes I hear the word AI and I'm afraid that we're going to move away from what we were just talking about in terms of communicating, appreciating people for their opinions. And now let's just have AI do everything. So to that, how did you bridge that gap? And how are you able to sort of find a proper mix between what the human experience and AI? So with that, I'll kind of give you an open slate to talk about it.
Yeah, so I think the first thing you have to think about is put AI in its proper perspective, Aswan. I think with any new technology, especially when it comes to business and work, first off, with the introduction of new technology, you're going to have people on different sides of how they feel about this. Some people are really excited. They want to get started right now as far as implementing it. Some people are like, hold up, what is this? Why are we doing this?
Right, right.
And you have some other people that say, hold up, is that coming from my job? And if so, I'm gonna figure out how to sabotage this. I'm gonna make sure that it doesn't see the light of day. I may not say that vocally, publicly, but I may be thinking that because now I feel threatened. And I
Hmm.
think with any new technology, understand like AI is essentially this generation's social media. It's this generation's personal computer or iPhone or this generation's automobile. So if you look back, history will tell us we've had new technologies come in all the time, and this is no different. But what's more so the question now is what is our response going to be? Are we going to actually try to learn what AI is, see how we can adopt it into what we do on a day to day basis at our jobs, make that commitment to master it, where we become more of a thought leader on our team with all things related to AI and what we do? help educate and build the skill sets of others, where we become more of a linchpin to our team that says, hey, I can't let Aswand go. He's teaching the whole team about how to go about AI on this one. Like, our productivity has soared because of AI and how he's been helping us out. So when it comes to AI, this should be seen as an opportunity to serve us, an opportunity to help us grow, help us become more productive, help us become more profitable for the team and the business in general. That they say, hey, I can't let him go.
Mm-hmm.
That's a joke. This is where we're going. We're going to need that person. But I got to make a choice. I'm picking the one that knows AI and how to adopt it over the person that says, oh, no, don't worry. AI is just a fad. It'll go away in like a couple of months. Right. But all in all, in the midst of me seeing news on a weekly basis of businesses making layoffs and laying off hundreds, if not thousands of people,
Right.
the message is clear. Business is going to be adopting AI because they know that by not adopting AI, its very existence and survival may hinge on how quickly they implement and include AI. And that extends to everyone who works for those businesses too.
In translation, listeners, if you do not change with the times will change you. I'll say that one again so you guys catch it. If you don't change with the times will change you. I cannot tell you how many times over this past, what, decade, I've watched, gone to the grocery store and I've seen cashiers with bad attitudes. And the minute they put those kiosks up, those people are slowly but surely get out the way. This is a trend. This is something that's going to happen regardless, whether you try to stop it or not. And I really, really love that you mentioned the point that, look, you can react one of two ways to whatever's new. Whether you can call it AI, you can call it A Blue, you can call it whatever it is, whatever the new technologies. There was a point where people didn't like automobiles. There was a point where people didn't like cell phones. It's coming. It's coming. So the question is, like he said, how exactly do you respond and what is your mindset? What is your mindset? And that's where it goes back to the connective tissue of what you were talking about earlier, is the human connection. What exactly do you want? How subjective are you going to be? Are you really going to be the one that sticks up for themselves, says what they feel, says what's on their heart in a meeting, and pursue the things that you actually love doing? Because if you're doing something just for a check and you get so bored, you get so annoyed with whatever it is you're doing, you're just doing it for a check, you will be replaced. And it'll be clear, because these business owners, what's on their mindset is, how do I bring in the revenue? How do I bring in money? And how do I make things a whole lot more efficient so I don't lose to a competitor? So that's the real question. The real question is, all right, how am I going to pursue the things I want? And am I willing to adopt with whatever new technology is available in order to do that? So that's a really, really great way of breaking it down. So with all that being said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. I definitely appreciate you coming on and dealing with some of the technical issues that we had earlier. Everything will be smoothed out. I've been doing this for 4 years, so I've become a very seasoned, experienced podcast host. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about what's next or what you got going on now? If people want to reach out to you, what are some of the ways you service people these days?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things is, even just on those two topics, as one is,
Mm-hmm.
it's understanding that our businesses and organizations today are at a crossroads as far as how we're going to go about these two topics that I feel like are the two most in demand skill sets, whether we know it or not.
Mm.
One of which is, how do our teams better work with one another when we have differences of opinions? And then two, how do we have a team that adopts AI and what it does to be more productive and more profitable?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, while I've written books on both of those topics, the next stage is, after I've wrote them, it's about getting the word out about them. It's about figuring out, how can I work with businesses, whether small or big, um, whether virtual, in person, whether in the United States or globally, to prepare for what's coming our way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big part of what I'm working on now, as far as, being able to work with these businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and then just continue to do that, going forward for the rest of the year, which should keep me plenty busy. But the goal is to help our people become better skilled at having these type of tough conversations, to build better relationships, but also build skill sets with regards to AI, for example, that helps them future proof their jobs and careers and grow with AI rather than be at the risk of being left behind. And so, with that being said, I would say, for people that want to continue the conversation with me, feel free to connect with me on my website, philipblackett.com, PhilipBlackett. You can also look me up on social media, whether Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram. Or if you're interested in one of my books, whether it's Disagree Without Disrespect or Future Proof that talks about AI, just look up my name, Philip Blackett, on Amazon. You can get access to those books there as well.
Okay, now, well, I mean, I have to address a lot of what you just said, and if because a lot of business owners listen to the show, and I'm gonna ask the question for them. How do you help? Like what's the specific thing that they would need from you? Like, what are some of your standards and what you would need? Because again, I'm sure you're a consultant, your time is not going to be wasted. You don't want people just walking up to you and saying, "Hey, I run a business. I need you." Like, what is the criteria that a business owner would need in order to work with you to for you to kind of walk them through this new way of thinking, this new AI world?
Yeah, so one of the ways as one that I work with business owners and entrepreneurs in particular is something I call dream business makeovers, focused on consulting with the business owner or entrepreneur directly one-on-one with their team to help grow their sales, grow their profits, grow their exit value through dream business makeovers that are powered by AI. And so I don't work with everyone. However, if you are a business owner that has a business that has at least, let's say, $250,000 in revenue, right, up to about 10 million, that is really my sweet spot, particularly established businesses. They could be of any different industry, but established is preferred. We can work in that capacity. Another way we can work together is, hey, how can we empower and educate and equip your people so that whether it's how to work with others that have differences of opinion or how to have a more AI enabled and AI literate workforce in your organization, there may be opportunities for us to collaborate there to see how I can come in to help train and share some of the insights we talked about here so that your people are much more productive and much more capable of what they're doing now with these two skill sets improved.
Man, and again, business owners, you got to take advantage of this stuff. And it's like I said, if you do not change with the times will change you. And it's here, it's coming, and there's no stopping it. So, with all that, the Philip, the way I close out all my shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. Once you go back to the younger version of yourself, you're at school, you're trying to figure it out, you're writing this book, you're disagreeing here, you have all these ideas that a creator would have. I want you to pretend that that young man came into the Zoom room, and I just want you to give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close with that.
What I would say is that, for my younger self, understand that the only thing constant is change and that resilience is key. As you progress in your career, you're going to learn new things, come across new stages, new technologies, new places, new settings. That's going to require you to adapt. And hopefully, from some of the things we talked about here in this conversation, you can learn some things that not only you just think, oh, that sounds good, but more importantly, apply it, take action on it. Because oftentimes your adaptability is going to play a huge role in what type of career you're ultimately going to have, whether good times or bad times, but you still just keep moving forward.
Mm. All right, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.